Hello, welcome to this webinar on environmental enrichment and its importance to donkeys. I've got with me Kayna Prescott, and Kayna achieved her degree in animal behaviour and wildlife biology in 2005. She then travelled to Mongolia to study behaviour of the Przewalski's horses living in the wild after their successful reintroduction. From then she moved to Kenya, working long-term research project which studied the disease threats, behaviour and human-wildlife conflict experienced by African wild dogs before we were lucky enough for her to join the Donkey Sanctuary in 2019 as the lead equine behaviour. So I'm really excited to have Kayna here to talk to you all about enrichment. And Kayna, welcome, and I'm going to pass over to you.
Great, thank you. Hi there, so as Ben just said, my name is Kayna Prescott. I'm the lead equine behaviour here at the Donkey Sanctuary, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the importance of environmental enrichment for our donkeys. During this webinar, we're going to be looking at what enrichment is and why it is so important for us to consider for donkeys. We'll be looking at the factors we take into account when making an enrichment plan. And then we're going to see how our daily management and living environment all contributes to the enrichment we provide. We're then going to look at how we provide enrichment for the donkeys in our care, and then the different types of enrichment we can offer on a more daily basis. So what is enrichment? Enrichment is adding relevant features to the environment to encourage natural and foster sort of natural behaviours from our donkeys. Studies have shown that environmental enrichment can reduce stress and abnormal behaviours, including aggression. Environmental enrichment can really foster good health and well-being in our donkeys. So in order to know what natural behaviours we want to encourage, we have to consider what natural behaviours our donkeys show. We're going to look at how they've evolved and the behaviour of their ancestors and their wild counterparts. You see, they evolved in very dry conditions where their forage was incredibly hard to find, and they would have to spend a long time searching. They'd travel up to 12 miles a day to find all the nutrients they needed in a day, which would keep them very fit and very active. There are numerous species of wild ass across the world and wild donkey. Resource availability really affects their behaviour, specifically their foraging behaviour. If resources are plentiful, they will spend time doing standard grazing, and if resources get more sparse, then they will resort to browsing of shrubs and bushes. They will even eat sort of woody material, and they've been seen to use their hooves to sort of dig up woody material to get the tubers underneath, which have got better nutrients. Access to water is incredibly important. They will dig in dry riverbeds up to 60 centimetres deep to access water, and in some environments they've been seen to eat snow. The social behaviour of wild donkeys and asses is quite variable across the species. In some, stallions will hold territories. What resources they have in their territory will sort of define how many females pass through or spend time there. So having a really good water source is very beneficial. The females will move between these territories dependent on what resources are available, and what time of year it is and what weather conditions they're experiencing, and also due to relationships they have sort of with the stallions. Sometimes some species form loose, larger bands and move around as a bigger group. And obviously there'll be a lot more social interacting occurring there. So our donkeys have evolved from species that would have been making choices and decisions all day, every day. The environment and the ground, the terrain that they cover would have been incredibly challenging and very varied. Each mouthful of forage that they found and took would have been the result of a decision, of a choice. So they'd have been incredibly fit and mentally very active. How does this wild behaviour come across into our domestic life? Well, our domestic environment is quite different to how they've evolved in the wild. We have beautiful paddocks that we provide for them, but from the donkey's perspective, they might not be quite as big to travel 12 miles a day, and they might not be quite as interesting as the environment that they evolved for. Due to our slightly damper climate than some of those countries, we have a lot of very lush green grass available. It's considered our donkeys can meet their nutritional needs in just 2 to 3 hours on this type of grass. This can obviously lead to physical problems with our donkeys, from obesity to laminitis. So obviously we need to really monitor and manage how much access they have to these lush green pastures. And this is where our management comes in. By limiting the access to grass and providing ad lib appropriate forage, such as straw and hay, we can make sure our donkeys stay in prime physical health. However, we have to be aware of the effect that this management can have. Inadvertently, we can reduce their chance of moving by restricting and reducing the size area that they have. By reducing their access to the different grasses, we are actually reducing the choices that they're able to make as well. And by moving the fences and having high quality forage all in one place, we sort of concentrate their time into one small area, which again works to reduce their movement. So we need to take all of these challenges into account when we're building our enrichment plan to make sure we optimise the environments we give them and do the best that we can to help them utilise their environment. And this is where we need to consider the goals of our enrichment. We want to be increasing that natural behaviours, but also we want to make it easy for them to display a range of natural behaviours, so to tap into many different aspects of their social life and their sensory. By encouraging this range of behaviours, we hope to reduce boredom. There can be stress or frustration associated with a domestic life and the restrictions that domestication can put on our donkeys. By placing our enrichment carefully in the environment, we can help them to utilise all of their environment. We can help motivate them to have more physical activity. We can work with enrichment to help them cope with the challenges they can encounter in domestic life. Having choice is really beneficial for everyone's mental health. So by allowing them more choice and by encouraging them to move and show these behaviours, by exposing them to new items and helping engage their curiosity, we can help build their confidence. We can even provide more formal training to help them cope with our domestic life. But of course, the first step is making a plan. We don't necessarily want our donkeys rushing from activity to activity during the day, because we want to foster natural behaviour. And naturally, donkeys would spend 16 to 18 hours a day foraging and finding and meeting their nutritional need. We also need to remember we need to ensure that the enrichment plan that we put together is achievable. There are limits to how much we can do. There are time limits and there are resources limits. So we need to really, work clever when making this enrichment plan. So one of the main things we really need to consider is all of the individual donkeys that we're going to be working with. What age are the donkeys that we're working with? Are they older donkeys or younger donkeys? The age will have an effect on the behaviours that they show, and if they are displaying more play behaviours, or whether they'd appreciate slightly less physical enrichment. We're going to be looking at their gender. Again, males and females show play behaviours in a slightly different way and have slightly different levels of activity. Their diet is important, whether they have any specific needs for their diet, or if they are more physically fit, they can probably cope with a slightly increased grass in their diet, which is when we start looking at the physical considerations. If they've got arthritis, or maybe they have got impaired eyesight, this is when we'd have to get some very specialist enrichment. Then we need to consider the social needs. Donkeys form either bonded pairs or small groups. So we need to be considering the individual needs of all the donkeys in that group. There could be young and old in the same bonded pair. There could be one with arthritis or maybe one that's very active. And we need to consider how we can optimise the environment for both. We also need to make sure we provide enough enrichment so there is no stress upon those relationships. They don't feel like they need to defend their enrichment from anybody else. Once we've looked at the individual donkeys, we need to start considering the areas that they have available for them. We'll be looking at the size of the area and what turnout is available and how that is affected by the weather and the different seasons. We'll be looking at the boundaries, whether they have hedges that are donkey safe, or if there are poisonous trees or plants and we need to ensure the donkeys can't access. Hedges provide natural shelter. Although we will always advise having a man-made shelter available, it's good to provide choice, and it can help with the social relations. We're also going to be looking at the area. Is the turnout provision on a hill? Is there a natural water source? Is there different types of substrates such as sand or bark available for the donkeys? And how can we incorporate that into their daily life? Now, we've considered the different aspects, the individual donkeys and the environment. And now what we're going to consider is how they're spending their time in this moment, how they're utilising the environment they currently have, and how we can then help them utilise it in more ways if we need to. We need to consider their sleep behaviour. Sleeping is a social behaviour, and we need to make sure they feel safe enough and have got the right provisions to feel comfortable enough to sleep as much as they need to. But we also need to remember that they do sleep for about 3 to 4 hours a day, which leaves 20 hours for us to consider. That's quite a long time for them to fill and be active in. We need to consider how they're spending those 20 hours. Are they looking for objects? Are they engaging in play with their friend? Are they moving around the whole area? Or are they slightly more interested in grazing and just being together quietly? And then we need to consider how much they want to interact with us. Are they actively seeking us out, or are they a bit more shy? Could we help them grow their confidence a bit more with the human interaction? So, in order not to overwhelm them or us, when we start an enrichment plan, we try and start with just one thing. Just make one change, and then see how it's received. Do they play with it for a long time or a short amount of time? Is it something that keeps them really entertained? Do they go back to it often? Assessing how they utilise the enrichment is really important as to how it will fit into our weekly plan. We're looking to see if we can refresh some aspects of the enrichment. So we just have to bring in a few new items, maybe with logs. We would refresh with new logs when their barks run out, every 4 or 5 days possibly. We're looking for items we might need to renew. So bring in maybe some more fresh branches cut from the hedges as we walk to see our donkeys. And then there'll be items that we're able to rotate through our plan by removing toys and putting them away for a few days to bring them out at another time. You will keep that sort of freshness, maintain the choice, which is so important to keep the interest and keep them busy with the enrichment. One aspect we can consider, which is generally on a slightly longer time frame, is how we can look at their management. If we have a strip grazing scenario, are we going to look to see if we can slowly adjust it to become a track around the edge? A track system is where you have an inner and an outer fence, few donkeys wide, so there's enough room for them to walk together or comfortably pass each other. You might make some wider areas or put different substrate around the track. We find this can really help encourage movement by spreading resources around the track and putting the resources in different ways. We can encourage more movement and interaction with their environment. Sometimes we place hay on the ground. We mix up the hay and straw together, so they're showing natural feeding position with grazing. They're also using their sense of smell and taste and touch to pick out the tasty bits from amongst the pile. We can also offer our donkeys the forage in a higher environment, so they're showing more browsing behaviour, which is again a natural behaviour. We can also offer it in a slow feeder, so it's slightly more challenging. Where and how we place the water is really important. We try and have more than one water source, so that if donkeys are able to group around it and have a nice social drink, which is really natural behaviour, they can feel comfortable to do so. But also if they're not comfortable with drinking as part of a group, then they have space and also different times that they can access the water on their own. This is how we maintain this social cohesion in a group. Here are some examples of the different types of management that we have for our donkeys at the sanctuary, which all provide different forms of enrichment. We have our Freedom to Roam project, which is a new project here at the sanctuary, and it's where we've opened up a really large area for the donkeys to freely explore. They're able to split off into smaller groups if they want, or remain in a larger group. They can access fields, meadows, tracks, woodland, which gives them a huge variety of plants for them to eat. We watch their physical health very closely to make sure they maintain their weight and don't put on weight. But we found with that increased exercise that they have in this environment, they stay healthy and well. We have a little donkey here who's got different types of toys available to choose from. Then we have a donkey, well, a group of donkeys are able to access a sand area in their paddock. Having a different form of substrate means that they've got a different challenge underfoot, so from a hard or grass surface to a softer sand surface. It can provide a different temperature on either hot or cool days, and a different texture for them to lie and roll in. All of these are choices and challenges and changes for them. At the bottom here, we have two different types of forage enrichment. We have the slow feeder on the right, where they have to work quite hard to get their forage. I think we've got some hedgerow plants in there as well. So that's some taste enrichment, and the smell will be different as well. We have to always make sure we've got free access forage alongside, so that they feel completely comfortable that this isn't their only way to avoid any forms of frustration. We also have the forage ball. This helps to replicate browsing behaviour. It's important to make sure the donkeys we offer this to are suitable and they haven't got any physical constraints that would make this difficult for them. We can fill the forage ball with hay, maybe appropriately cut bits of carrot or apples, and some hedgerow plants we could place in there as well to create variety and different senses and tastes for them as they forage, and it really motivates them to give it a good go and give it a good try. What's really lovely, and what I particularly enjoy, is the fact that we can be enriching for our donkeys. Very often our donkeys will positively seek out interactions with us. It's fantastic watching our brilliant grooms and our really amazing volunteers at the sanctuary being able to give these donkeys some quality time of interacting together. I certainly find it beneficial for myself as well, taking time out of a busy day to stand and just be with a donkey is incredibly a beautiful moment for us all. Being able to stand and find those itchy spots, making them really enjoy that, that's lovely. And it really helps to build relationships and build a bond. Spending time grooming is another fabulous activity for building relationships with our donkeys. And all of these positive interactions help build the donkey's confidence with us as people. We can put together more formal training sessions where we expose them to novel objects. This engages their curiosity, and when the situation is positive, it helps them build confidence with new items. If we follow a well thought out shaping plan, we can train our donkeys to be safe to walk out into the environment and the outside area with us. This is hugely beneficial for us because it increases our physical exercise as well as the donkeys. And as much as anything, it hugely broadens our horizons. Consider all the different sights and smells that they will be encountering as they walk out and away. We always make sure we take out bonded pairs together, so there's no social stress in these situations. It should just be for the enjoyment of the donkeys, and us too. So now we've considered how we can incorporate their environment, our management routines, including application of forage, and also how we interact with the donkeys to really enrich each and every day. Now we can look at some of these extra activities that we can bring in on a rotational basis to keep them fresh and different for the donkeys. We have here some donkeys that are loving some object play with a welly at the top and with a log at the bottom. They stripped all the bark off and now using it to play with. There is sensory enrichment, where we can use spices and herbs to get them being curious about the different smells. We can present this in a variety of ways. We have spices on the floor here, and we can also put herbs in amongst their forage, and scatter it amongst the straw and the hay, so that when they are eating it, they've also got this scent enrichment. We have a type of feeder here with some banana in. The donkey will have to work really hard to get those bits of taste and flavour of the bananas out, and that can really keep them busy and help them keep them mentally active. We can use bananas to create scent trails around an area, which will increase their physical movement and help utilise the whole area. Water is a brilliant way of providing enrichment. We provide warm water for a lot of our donkeys at different times. Studies have shown that donkeys are likely to drink more water if it is warm. So offering it to older donkeys in the depths of winter when it's cold can really help their physical health by maintaining their fluid levels at these times. We can also add different types of herbal tea to create a taste enrichment as well as a smell enrichment, and you've got the temperature. We can sometimes put these flavoured tea across their hay as well to add another element of it. So as you can see, there's many different things that we can bring into the environment and rotate through, which shouldn't take too much time out of our day and really gives our donkey something to do. Other types of activities we can put in are puzzle feeders. When we introduce puzzle feeders, we must make sure that our donkeys are introduced to them slowly and in a way so that they can achieve, so they don't become frustrated or stressed. And we should always observe our donkeys when they're going with puzzle feeders. This enrichment is replicating, encouraging, motivating browsing behaviour. It's got different textures because it's a bit of a woody plant, and there's different tastes and smells. And this enrichment is suitable for just 1 or 2 donkeys. And as you can see, they're really enjoying it. It's incredibly important to always consider safety with any enrichment that we bring in for our donkeys. We must make sure the plants that we provide are safe plants, that they're not poisonous or toxic. We must make sure the items we provide are not sharp, and that the donkeys cannot get caught up in any way whatsoever. So safety and suitability for the donkeys are really important when considering what enrichment we give to our donkeys. So on a final note, I just want to say I hope you sort of appreciate now why we consider enrichment to be so important and how it really is part of every aspect of our donkeys' lives. By adding these enrichments, we hope they're going to engage with us and their environment more and get to display these natural behaviours that will help them live a full and happy life. I have attached here a link to a brilliant document that the Donkey Sanctuary has put together, which has got a load of information about enrichment and how to optimise the environment for individual donkeys. And it has a huge amount of different types of activities to give inspiration for people who are looking for things to do with their donkeys. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you've enjoyed my chat. Thank you so much.
Brilliant, Kayna. That was a fantastic presentation. I love the variety. For you, what do you think the greatest thing is that donkeys get from enrichment?
It's this range of behaviours that they can show. It's this physical movement that we can encourage across the area by really working to get their environment as varied as possible. It creates a real 24/7 enrichment for them and helps foster that social behaviour that we see as well.